Welcome back, everyone. Fascinating conversation, so practical and inspiring from the co-author of this renowned book, The Go-Giver, Bob Burg. Bob Burg is one of the nation's most influential authors, as identified by AMA, the American Management Association, has sold nearly 2 million copies across all of his titles. And we're midway through what he calls the 5 laws of stratospheric success. So Bob has co-authored with his colleague, John David Mann, this book called The Go-Giver. As I mentioned prior to going to break, my wife will tell you, do not ever see a movie that Scott Miller recommends, or go to a restaurant or a vacation site or anything else that I have low credibility on. But I've got some chops when it comes to knowing a good book when I read it, and The Go-Giver is a must-read for every parent, every spouse, every friend, every leader, every human. Is this gift to the nation, to the world, really. I'm not being hyperbolic. This is a phenomenally great read. One of those books that takes you probably 1 hour to read if you're smart and wise, or 1 day to read if you're more like me, where you put it down every few sentences and want to pick up on some of the great insights. When we went to break, we were talking about the 5 laws of stratospheric success that Bob and his colleague, John David Mann, kind of pepper throughout this parable. We've already reviewed the first 2 laws, the law of value and the law of compensation. Bob, take a few moments and talk about the next 3. First, the law of influence.
Yeah, this one says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Again, this one sounds counterproductive at best, perhaps downright Pollyanna-ish at worst, and yet you think about it, right? The greatest leaders, the top influencers, the most successful, highest money-earning salespeople, this is simply how they run their lives and conduct their businesses. They're always looking for ways to focus on bringing immense value to others. Now, I want to qualify the statement, though, by saying that when we say place the other person's interests first, we don't mean you should be anyone's doormat or a martyr, right, or self-sacrificial. Not at all. It's simply that, again, as we've discussed already, all things being equal, right, people will do business with, refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. Well, Scott, there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by genuinely moving from that I focus to that other focus, looking to make your win all about the other person's win. And when you do that and you develop a reputation for that, you become truly a center of influence, and you develop that army of what we call personal walking ambassadors. That's influence.
You know, Bob, I've spent the better part of my career, almost my entire career, in this leadership development industry. And what I have learned from interviewing hundreds of best-selling authors and business leaders and celebrities who are grounded in leaving a legacy, people like Patrick Lencioni, Ken Blanchard, Stephen Covey, Dave Ramsey, Bob Burg, you all have this common theme around an abundance mentality, around thinking win-win, in collaboration. How did you come to your own insight on that? Was it from studying at the feet of great leaders? Was it from making mistakes, mentors? How did you come to those same wisdom, the same insights that all these other great leaders came to? Everyone comes back to these same general points on how to live a principled life.
Yeah, well, I mean, personally, I don't think I've ever had an original thought in my life.
Me either, bro.
I've read those people who you talk about, and by the way, just thank you for even including me in the same sentence as those icons. I appreciate that. But yeah, sure, I've just learned and studied and watched and observed and read and practiced and failed and succeeded at times. And I think you do that, and you start to see over time what really works and what doesn't, and what's the way that's congruent with your values and how you want to live your life, and we begin to see that it really is those people who focus on bringing value to others that they're the ones who succeed. Look at what Zig Ziglar said. Remember Zig?
Sure.
He had that wonderful Yazoo City, Mississippi Southern drawl. He used to say, you can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want.
You are a voiceover expert. Look at that.
I listened to his CDs, how many times?
Exactly.
Probably at least 30 or 40.
You sounded as much like my colleague Jim Hewling as you did Zig Ziglar. Let's keep going. The 5 laws of stratospheric success: the law of value, the law of compensation, the law of influence. Next is the law of authenticity.
This says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. And one of the mentors in the story, Deborah, shared that, all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and yes, these are all very, very important skills, but they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. On the other hand, when you, as we like to say, show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. People feel safe with you. People know, they love, and trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. So, we've got to understand that the most important thing we can do is be ourselves, and yet it's often difficult for people to do only because they may not truly recognize the value they bring to the table. Because, we're human beings, and it's difficult to kind of sometimes see what we do that does bring value, because we look at what we do as everyone can do it, right? We see that we think the world is just from our viewpoint. So it's very important to really understand both our strengths and our weaknesses, certainly, but to really determine what those strengths are, whether through self-study or with the help of a coach, what have you, and then be able to lead with those strengths. And that's when we can really show up authentically.
Bob, if the authorship thing never works for you, FranklinCovey would love to hire you as one of our consultants. Okay, so you got a backup gig.
Well, thanks. Well, of course, that was one of my first books that I really, on my The 7 Habits which is an iconic book, of course. And
30 million copies sold. Yeah, amazing.
And, that's one of those. That's in that list of books you recommend to everyone as don't even think of not getting that.
Right. In fact, Bob, we're re-releasing it in January. It is the 30th anniversary of the 7 Habits. 30 million copies sold. And Sean Covey, one of Dr. Covey's son, is going to provide new insights. So Sean Covey, who, of course, has sold on his own right millions of books, notably the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, is going to provide insights after each of the habits. I'm very excited about that book coming out.
I love that. And I got to just tell you real quickly that Stephen M.R. Covey, who happens to be a friend of mine, his book, The Speed of Trust, I probably, in all the years since that book's been out that I've spoken on stage, that book I think I have held up and quoted from at just about every single program where I've spoken.
Bob, I appreciate that. Steve and I talked just yesterday. He was keynoting the World Business Forum in Sydney, Australia, to like a standing ovation audience. He's coming back today. When I see him for lunch on Friday, I'll mention that you called him out. Thank you for that.
Yeah, please tell him I said hello. He's just a great human being, and, of course, the entire Covey family, just an inspiration to all of us.
It's very true. The 5 Laws of Stratospheric Success, that we're talking about with Bob Burg, the co-author of the book, The Go-Giver. Let's land this. The Law of Receptivity.
Yeah. This says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And it means nothing more than that we breathe out and we breathe in. It's not one or the other. And despite all the messages of lack that we receive from the world around us, the fact is that giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. They're simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work together in tandem. It's not are you a giver or a receiver. It's you're a giver and a receiver. Now, we focus on the giving. Of course, you focus on the giving, and then you allow the receiving. And when you're willing to do that, then you will live in abundance.
Bob, beyond these 5 laws of success in the book, there's so many other great nuggets. I want to get on a couple of them before our time ends. You and your co-author coined this phrase, a personal walking ambassador. Talk a little bit about what that is and why it's so important and how someone creates them.
Yeah, these are the centers of influence, right? Sphere of influence is the people we know somehow, some way, one way or another, directly or indirectly, and most people have a sphere of influence of about 250 or so people. Now, the centers of influence are those people who just they know you, they love you, they trust you, they sing your praises, they've got you in mind, they've got your back, they are out there and they want to promote you and promote your business. And these are your personal walking ambassadors. And when you're fortunate enough to develop some of these people in your life and in your business, you're 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game. And you do that by being a person worthy of having those personal walking ambassadors.
I think it's just a great reminder to everyone, not just to get a group of your own ambassadors, but to ensure that you are the ambassador for others as well, right?
Well, absolutely, and that's really where it all begins. And when you can do that, and when your focus is, okay, how can I benefit these 2 other people? How can I connect John with Deborah, because John has this great product that would be fantastic for Deborah, or Susan and Steve would be just great to do a joint venture, or and you can always have other people in mind. And you do this thoughtfully, you do this intelligently, you do this genuinely. That's when you start planting those seeds and you begin to develop those personal walking ambassadors.
Hey, Bob, give me some personal coaching advice, because I have learned sometimes the hard way that really my most valuable asset beyond my soul is my reputation, my credibility. And as I gain some influence, and as my sphere of ambassadors grows, I have a lot of people coming to me to hook me with other people or to network through me, especially as I begin hosting programs and have connections now to some pretty influential people. I find that I have to be much more deliberate with who I connect to who, because if I do connect someone, my credibility is on the line. There have been times when I've had, a significant influencer, best-selling author, famous household name, and I have connected them with someone and it didn't work out well. And I think, dang, I shouldn't have done that because the person didn't deserve that connection. They weren't a bad person. They let them down. What advice would you give to people like me when they've been asked to connect someone to someone and it probably isn't the right connection, and your own brand is going to suffer if that isn't the right connection? What do you do?
Yeah, it's like any other way in which you have to say no to people, and it's always a difficult thing because, we want to be able to please others and we want to be able to help others, but the fact is we're not able to say yes to everyone and still do things the right way. And so, we need to be able to say no in a way that's kind, tactful, and respectful, but of course sets the boundaries and honors the boundaries. So if someone asks you and you just feel it's not someone that you can connect with someone to, you thank the person. Thank you so much for asking. I appreciate that you would want to meet so and so. I don't feel I'm in a position to be able to comfortably make that connection. And you're not saying anything that's about them or that it's about but again, I do appreciate you reaching out. Thank you so much.
That's great. I think that's tactful and clear and respectful. We're talking today, listening hopefully today, with Bob Burg, the co-author of the book, The Go-Giver. Another insight in your book was this concept that Joe, who's the main character, he asks a question, and kind of the wise sage in the book says to him, it's a great question, but you might have it out of order. Take a moment and share the learning from that.
Yeah. At one point, Joe had asked Pindar, the main mentor, about, will this make money, and that's the big thing. That's the first question you got to know. And Pindar, and Pindar was saying that Joe may have his focus in the wrong place. And Joe says, are you saying asking if something will make money is a bad question? And Pindar said, no, asking if something will make money is a great question. It's just a bad first question. And so what did Pindar really mean by that? Because some people might say, well, wait a second, Bob, especially if I'm inventing a product or a service or if I'm selling a certain thing, isn't the big question, will it make money? Well, think about that. Remember what we were talking about earlier. No one's going to buy from you because you need the money, right? They're going to buy from you because they believe it provides something of value to them. So if you lead with the money about will it make money, again, it's not that it's a bad question. It's just not the right first question. First ask, will it serve? Is this going to bring value to other human beings? And as an extension of that, is it something that there's a market for or that a market can be created? Because if there is no market for it, well, it's not going to make money. If it's not something that's going to serve and the people are going to use, it's not going to make money. By the same token, if it's something that people would like and people would use and there's a market for it, but it's not profitable, well, then what you've got is an expensive hobby. So both are important, but just like we say money is an echo of value, meaning the value must be the focus. The money is the result of that value. It's the same here. First ask, does it serve? Will it bring value to the marketplace, to other human beings? Then ask, okay, if I know that the answer to that yes, now will it also make money?
Bob, what's the one big piece of advice that you've taken from all that you've learned in your career as you've kind of moved from your own version of Joe into your, sort of wiser, sage, older self?
Well, I think after, and this is almost 40 years ago now, that it was soon after I got into sales. Once I began to read books on selling and understood there was a system to it, that there was a methodology, I did well. But after a couple of years, I was doing well, but not nearly as well as I should have been. I was Joe. I was a guy who was not near reaching my potential, and I think my focus was sort of like Joe. And I remember coming back to the office of the company where I was selling for, and it was a rather high-ticket item that I was selling, and it was a great product. And I remember being really disgusted because the prospect didn't buy it. He didn't get it, why it would be so good, which, of course, it wasn't their fault. It was my fault for not communicating it correctly. But one of the people there, one of the older guys there, he wasn't even in sales. He was an engineer. He was one of these guys. He didn't say much, but when he did say something, it was always profound. And I think he saw me as Joe. He saw me as a guy with potential. And he said, "Burg, can I give you some advice?" I said, "Sure, absolutely, please do." And he said, "If you want to make a lot of money in business," actually he said, "if you want to make a lot of money in sales," he said, "don't have making money as your target. Your target is serving others. Now, when you hit the target," he said, "you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It ain't the target itself. Your target is serving others."
So well said. Bob, in our final minute, take us into the writer's room. How do you and your co-authors or co-author John decide to write a parable? Can you take us behind the scenes, and do you weave like a real life story you've experienced and kind of fictionalize it? I mean, I've written several leadership books, co-authored them, fairly straightforward, not even close to parables or fiction. But walk us into the writer's room and tell us, how does that work?
Yeah, we took a lot of real life happenings and we put them within the story itself. And again, John is such a great writer. Just such a great storyteller that he can weave it together so that it makes sense and really pops from the page. But yeah, a lot of those incidents in the book were things that happened. We just put it, within the form of the story. So that's how we did it. And I suspect that's probably how many other parable writers do it as well.
Bob, what's the one big mistake you see people that have great potential, great desire, great intention, whether they're in sales or they're in leadership or manufacturing or engineers? Is there a common challenge that you see people with high potential that tend to trip up or have challenges that if they were to overcome that, they could literally change their trajectory in a day, in a thought, in an action?
Well, I think it's getting out of their own way, just as I had to get out of my own way and continue to have to get out of my own way. And, so it's really making sure that we're checking premises, that we're thinking things through, that we're questioning things, we're asking why, and then we're making sure these answers, then go a couple levels deep. It's making sure that we understand others. Dr. Covey's seek first to understand and then to be understood, to me, is still one of the wisest and least utilized pieces of wisdom I've ever experienced.
Bob Burg, co-author of The Go-Giver with your good friend and colleague John David Mann. Thank you for joining Great Life, Great Career.
Scott, thank you so much for having me.